Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Razan Pereira. The global economy that was already struggling to overcome the economic slowdown due to the trade war between the US and China has received another jolt in the form of the coronavirus pandemic. The crisis in the economy has been manifested amply in the stock markets, which have witnessed deep falls across the board. Circuit breakers had to be used on several occasions to stabilize the markets across the world. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the impact of COVID-19 on global stock markets. Joining me on the program today are Nilesh Shah, Managing Director, Kotak Mahindra Asset Management, Arvind Virmani, former Chief Economic Advisor of the Government of India, and Jayant Das Gupta, former Ambassador of India at the WTO. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Nilesh Shah, I'd like to begin the program with you. Let's first try and analyze and understand, what the situation is like right now and how would you analyze what is happening in the global stock markets?
Globally, stock markets around the world are today living in uncertainty as to when will normal economic activity resume. Different countries have different kind of shutdowns, lock-ins, restricting travel, restricting trade. Ships are not moving, planes are not flying, cargoes are chocked. So clearly, market is on one side in the fear mode that when will this whole thing come to an end? This is medical crisis metamorphosing into real life crisis. And clearly, unless until a medical solution emerges, neither the economy nor the markets can make a bottom. On the other hand, at least in certain parts of the world, central government as well as central banks are giving unequivocal message that they will do whatever it takes. For example, US Fed announced intervention in market for $1 trillion in CP market, $500 billion in gilts market, $200 billion each in munis and mortgage-backed securities market. After announcing $1.9 trillion intervention when they thought that market is not taking it seriously, they said now it's unlimited amount. So one side market is hopeful that medical solution will emerge and the efforts done by central bank and central government will allow economic recovery to happen. On the other side, there is this fear, when will normal activity begin and in what shape it will begin. So we are seeing a swing, extreme bout of volatility between fear and hope. On other hand, we are also seeing this huge interconnectedness coming from rates market to currency market to commodity market to equity market. So at best, if I can say, we are looking ahead for next reasonable future of extreme volatility swinging between hope and fear due to interconnectedness of the market.
Right. Okay. All right, Dr. Virmani, what impact has the economic slowdown around the world really had on the markets as a whole?
So for your general listener, let me give a little background in the way I see it. Of course, Mr. Shah is in the markets every day, but from my perspective, the fundamental issue here is the difference between uncertainty and risk. Markets are used to dealing with risk. That is their bread and butter. But risk estimation depends on a sequence of past events which have happened over decades and sometimes half a century. The fundamental problem here with the pandemic was that these are like once in half a century, or well, we've had 3 or so epidemics recently. But if you look in the perspective of history, this kind of event produces huge uncertainty, which is quite different from risk. So as Mr. Shah has pointed out some of the elements of that, I'll just point to a few more. The basic problem which people faced was that they had no idea of the medical effects of this thing, of this pandemic to start with. And second, it aroused huge fears because there is no known even ameliorative, not to speak of vaccine. So as Mr. Shah pointed out, the most of the focus in the risk, as I could see, the perception of uncertainty was that things will start clearing up when there is some kind of a medicine or something in sight. So I think till that happens, the period of uncertainty will continue, and nobody can predict. I mean, everybody's guessing 6 months, 12 months, whatever. But once that happens, I think the normal kind of risk issues and perceptions, and then we can use our normal economic analysis to analyze them. So that is kind of the broad perspective I would give to the kind of the general listener.
Okay, all right. Ambassador Dasgupta, so what has spooked the investors the most across the globe? I mean, the fact that this could last for an indefinite time because they don't really know how long this is going to last, is that it? Or is it the fact that, there's so little known about this virus itself? Or is there some kind of correction that has taken place?
I think it is a combination of several factors. The first one is, of course, uncertainty and the period of uncertainty. Nobody really knows when the lockdown or partial lockdown will be lifted across the globe, and normal economic activity will resume. So factories are shut down. The ranks of the unemployed is increasing every day. From the US, where figures are collected on a very regular basis, we see that a large number of people have become unemployed. And so would be the case in India. Of course, it is common knowledge because manufacturing activity, agriculture operations, transportation, everything has been affected. So the fear of the uncertainty and how long it will last, that is the first reason why the market has tanked. The second point is that if you look at various sectors of the economy, for instance, because the economic activity has been on hold for so long, and it is likely to not come back to normal for a long time. The banks, for instance, which form a substantial part of the financial sector, they will be faced with a huge amount of non-performing assets. And that is one aspect which will have to be tackled by all governments. The second point is that revenue is going to come down very, very sharply because there is no economic activity. The third point is that, even when we lift, let's say, and come back to normalcy, there is going to be a huge shrinkage of demand. So what will, for instance, a manufacturing activity which caters to the demands of a large number of people, if the purchasing power is not there, what will it manufacture and sell? And the last point is, in order to get out of this problem, most governments are going to, spend more and more. As Mr. Shah mentioned, the US has really declared, war on this pandemic and has said that it will open its coffers to any extent. Now, if smaller economies also, start, for instance, currency printing, because revenues are not going to meet the demand, then there is going to be inflation as well. So all these factors put together, I would say, are contributing to this uncertainty. And the last one is the unresolved dispute between the OPEC Plus and Russia and its allies, which of course has been resolved now with a 10% cut in oil production. Now, if you look at oil, about 100 million barrels per day is the production. It has already fallen by about 30%. So if you cut the production by 10%, and that too from May onwards, May and June, is it really going to change things very much? So that is another factor which is causing a great deal of uncertainty.
Okay, all right. Taking the discussion forward now, Mr. Shah, is the slump really across the board, or are there some stocks that are doing better than the others? What is it that you analyzed?
So, of course, the slump is far more in small and mid cap compared to large cap. And within large cap, there is polarization. So we have a scenario where Hindustan Unilever, which is subsidiary of Unilever PLC, now along with Klexo Consumer contributes about 18% of profit, but 60% of their global market cap. Clearly, that's huge contribution compared to their profitability. Why are people buying into Hindustan Lever? Because one, it's a safe stock, there's no supply, and hence no one is looking at valuation, which are now trading at 100% premium to its historical valuation of last 10 years. On the other hand, there are companies which are now trading below their cash value on balance sheet. This is again pessimism on extreme, where one thinks that even cash value is not realizable. So we are seeing huge divergence in market where few select stocks, because of their safe nature of business, are trading at historically high valuation, and bulk of the small, mid, and other large caps trading at lower than or near bottom valuation on historical basis. There is wide divergence in the market.
Okay, all right. There's wide divergence in the markets, is what the markets expert is suggesting. Dr. Virmani, once the lockdowns are lifted, can we expect the markets to rally?
I think one must understand that a lockdown, a national lockdown of the kind we have and some other countries have, is a shutdown of both production and consumption. So I hear many people talking about fiscal stimulus, this, that, and the other. These are kind of meaningless things in this context. There's no issue of fiscal stimulus because all you have is the essential commodities production and purchase going on. If I had more money, what will I do with it? I'm going to buy more food. Those are all limited. So in the initial stage, in the period of the lockdown, it's an issue of survival. So I am not on the margin, but people who are in the margin or below it, you have to, the government, the people have to make sure that they survive. So that is really the key issue. Once the lockdown is lifted, then we will be in a normal situation, economically I'm speaking, where you have, and we already have experience before the lockdown, that there are certain sectors which are referred to as contact sectors. You're all familiar with them: hospitality, travel, tourism, etc., which involve groups of people. So those, we know the fear, whatever government bans or restricts or whatever, there will be a fear of going on those for quite some time, 6 to 9 months. But even after the lockdown for 3 months or so, the government will actually have to ban or restrict activities in this field. So it's very clear that these sectors will take longer to recover. So the real issue is the rest of the economy, which we've been making some estimates, I and a colleague of mine, and basically that leaves about 50% of the economy. And really, when we are discussing what happens to the stock market, that is going to be the key elements of the revival, which right now it's a little difficult to say. All we've been able to do is to build some scenarios which say that the effect of that on the overall economy over a 12 months period may be between, the growth could be between 0% and 3%, depending on the lockdown, what other things are done, policies, etc. Obviously, the uncertainty and risk from the pandemic itself, as I said, will not start to reduce till we see some kind of a medicine or something which appears. So there is this huge uncertainty, and I think there's a range of GDP we expect, but we should not think that government, of course, sorry, I should have mentioned that in that crisis period post-lockdown, there will also be the issue of survival of companies, which again, Mr. Shah can give individual examples, but basically not just in these contact sectors, but in other sectors which were adversely affected earlier also, because we were in a growth recession for the much of last year. So all those companies which were already affected negatively by these also one will have to watch out for. I would mention like the automobile sector, which was suffering, etc. The government have to clearly watch. And then, of course, there are a whole broad range of companies where it's more about monetary policy, credit policy, and those sort of things, which the monetary authorities, I'm sure, I mean, I know I worked with them during the global financial crisis. They have the information and the knowledge of how to deal with these crises. Of course, again, the practical people like Mr. Shah feeding them the current information, which is always very important in a crisis. You need, detailed information from people who are actually involved to focus exactly where the problems are arising, where the monetary authorities have to act, etc. But I'm pretty sure that they have the capability to do so.
Okay, all right. Since we are here, Ambassador Das Gupta, what needs to be done, do you believe, to give the market some much needed impetus?
I think rather than looking at the markets through, in an isolated manner, we have to look at the overall economy. So the first thing is to keep, our livelihoods or restore our livelihoods as quickly as possible, to reduce unemployment as quickly as possible, back to the normal levels. So the first thing, and the government, I'm sure, is going to do it very soon, that is about agriculture, which caters to a very large number of our people who are in the unorganized sector. The second thing is if we could revive, industries like textiles, for instance, which also employ a large number of people. We could give a kind of an impetus, if it comes to the government, for food processing, because we will have, no shortage of agricultural produce. But if we could, in the short term and in the medium term, if we could invest, if we could find out ways of utilizing our produce to, make economic gains for the people who are involved in agriculture, that would be a huge thing. And the last point I wanted to make is that demand stimulus has to be provided. It could be a stimulus, it could be the kind of thing which the government has already done by putting money in the Jan Dhan accounts. Now, how long it can be sustained is a big question, but that is, I think, most important. So if we want to get back to normal as soon as possible, the government will have to spend and put money in the hands of the people who are the most vulnerable.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Shah, what factors do you believe are going to determine whether the markets are going to bounce back or not?
As Ambassador Das Gupta and Dr. Virmani say, it is the economy which matters. Market is a drive. Market will be driven by what happens in economy. We can uplift market through money for a short period of time, but eventually fundamentals will prevail. So we have to focus on ensuring that our economy is in good shape. Eventually market will rise. How do we bring economy in good shape apart from very good suggestions given by Ambassador Das Gupta? I think I want to focus on one thing. Today, the perception about China has deteriorated and perception about India has gone up. Two of the oldest civilizations in the world, one gave Wuhan virus to the world, other gave hydroxychloroquine tablets to the world. There is positive image for India undoubtedly. Now, how do we leverage this image? Ambassador Das Gupta talked about textiles. The largest number of labor apart from agriculture is in textile industry at about 40 million. Now, unfortunately, Bangladesh exports 3 times more garments than us because they have concessional access to European Union and US market, whereas we lost out. Now, Bangladesh next year is likely to be ahead of India in per capita GDP. How can they have concessional access to market and we don't when we are poorer than Bangladesh in per capita GDP? So by giving hydroxychloroquine tablets, can we request European Union and America to ensure that our textile garment makers get preferential access to their market. The second thing is supply chain diversification. In 1980, India and China were of similar size in per capita GDP and total GDP. They ended up becoming manufacturer to the world and become part of global supply chain management. If we didn't do as good a job as them, today they are 5 times bigger than us. Now, globally, we are seeing corporations looking to diversify their supply chain away from China. Like we brought Tata Motors from Singhu to Sanand with one SMS of Suswagatam, can we bring these companies from China to India and help them stabilize over here? To give you an example how big this opportunity is, let's look at Samsung, which is a Korean chaebol. It came to India long before it went to Vietnam. They make in India fridge, television, AC, mobile phones. The turnover is about $10 to $12 billion because they sell only in India. In Vietnam, they went much after India. They make in Vietnam but sell all over the world. The turnover in Vietnam is $62 billion. Their contribution to Vietnam GDP is 28% of GDP. It is more than what government of India, including state governments, contribute to the GDP of India. The value and importance of Samsung in Vietnam is more than government's importance in India. Just imagine the miracle which Vietnam economy has created over the last 15 years and how much Samsung has led that. We have to ensure that in the days to come, we move companies away from China to India. We become manufacturer to the world. It's not a 1-year target, 2-year target, 5-year target. It's a multi-year target. It will require support and cooperation between central government, state government, local government. But if we focus over here, the opportunity which we missed out in 80s can be captured back in 20s. And today we have everything working in our favor. Companies want to move away. China's perception has deteriorated. We just have to grab the opportunity.
Okay, all right. Interesting there. I want to take that particular point that Mr. Shah is making forward with you, Ambassador Dasgupta. You know, goodwill diplomacy is what I would like to call it. Use the goodwill that we have created and leverage it at a time of need, because at the end of the day, we've come to the aid of several nations around the world.
I entirely agree with Mr. Shah. This pandemic has provided us with an opportunity to seek investments into India, and especially if large companies are trying to relocate from China or to diversify their manufacturing base, their services base. So this is a time when we have to get our own act together. We have to give a level playing field. We have to make ourselves attractive the same way that Vietnam has done in respect of electronics, in respect of textiles, in respect of a host of other industries. So we have to do that in a very short period of time. Let's say we reach normalcy by about the second quarter of this financial year. And then before that, we must have things in place. And, let us not try to do everything at one go and try to, provide the investment opportunities in all sectors all over the country. We can't do that because our infrastructural deficit is there. So let us choose a few industries, a few areas where they can invest very quickly, where, an investor can come in and within 10 days, he finds the kind of opportunities that are being provided by Vietnam or other countries. They are available in India as well. That is what we need to do. And we have to plan for that. We have to take the central government has to take the cooperation of the state governments. Everybody has to be on the same page for a national cause. And that could lead to a faster revival.
Okay, all right. And Dr. Virmani, close the show for us with your concluding remarks on the best way forward.
Right. So there are basically 3 phases in which government and we have to think. The first is, as I said, the lockdown and how to deal with it, the survival issue. The second is where a focused fiscal and monetary credit policy has to be there to ensure that firms and businesses survive, because they are the employment generators and start to recover. And the third phase is what what you have just, my two colleagues have just been talking about, the participants, and that is we have to ensure that everything is done to ensure that the recovery is quick, because you can be stuck unless you take the actions, the policy and reform action needed to get back on track. And in this context, as I mentioned, the fact that we were already in growth recession is very, very important. So all the policy recommendations which I and many others have made to put the economy back on that potential growth path become very important. And these are some of the opportunities, basically the opportunity of supply chain diversification had already started with Mr. Trump's tariff war, President Trump's tariff war. And that actually will accelerate, in my view, quite a lot, particularly in the next 2 to 3 years. Then it may go back to a slow trend, but in the next 2 3 years, as both others have said, that opportunity is higher now, except that world trade will be a little slower. So it's a balancing act, and really we have to go back to increase the competitiveness, but we may have to leaven this a bit with some kind of imports substitution subsidies, focus, for example, on API, where dependence is high, and other areas of dependence of the world on China. And I think it'll be important where diplomacy, I wish you had talked about diplomacy, comes in, that we should actually work with other countries who are equally concerned, including the USA and many European countries, of this over-dependence on one source, namely China. And I think there's great scope for diplomacy in that context, economic diplomacy.
Diplomacy is a whole new topic in itself, and I'm going to be taking it up on another day. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my panelists for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that the pandemic has, of course, thrown in a lot of challenges, but there are several opportunities as well. What India needs to do is act fast and also ensure that it uses the goodwill that it has received over the last few days and leverage that at some point in time to ensure that it works in our favor, is what the panelists are suggesting. That's it from me. See you again next time.